Hello, this is Jeremy Webster, and I'm here today with David Greg Taylor, and we are going to talk comics. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing great. It's a Sunday night and everything's laid back and cool.
Are you in, where are you at?
I'm in Florida.
Florida. What's the weather like down there right now?
Hot. Hot is all get out. I love air conditioning. I did not have air conditioning full time until I moved here 5 days before Andrew in 1992.
Yeah.
Didn't have well, that kind of messed up the air conditioning for a while, but since then I have loved air conditioning.
And we're here to talk today about your, I believe you're at the fourth book in the series. You got the Kickstarter up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Book number 4 in Blueboy Brown, right?
Blueboy Brown Comics, The Adventures of a Family.
Adventures of a Family. And you can see a panel behind him there. He's using that as wallpaper from the Battle of Gettysburg as presented in. Is that in the new book or one of the previous ones?
This is in the first book.
In the first book?
Yeah, which is actually available as a free PDF on the Kickstarter page. Just to get everybody warmed up to the idea of what the whole thing's about. It's a good idea. I'm four comics into this. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing to let people see what's going on. You know, it's free and it's a good way to get started.
So I did some looking at through issues. I didn't get the free issue, but I was reading through your stuff a lot because I like to do that. And quite honestly, your art is very inviting.
Well,
particularly to me. You have an interesting vibe. It's very, you run along, I'm not saying you're like another artist, but you have you come from an older school of art. Richard Corbin immediately comes to mind.
I've met him.
Oh, was that cool?
When I was very young.
Yeah.
When 19 years old, I met him. I went to his studio. Went to his studio and saw his whole setup. Very, very, he's obviously a brilliant cartoonist, but he had little figurines of all his characters that he had made in Sculpey or something like that, and they were perfect. And when he used them, he kept it. It's like a 3D model now. He kept himself on task of where he knew exactly what that character was like, and he was a former animator. He'd been working in animation in the years before he went into underground comics, and I suppose maybe this is one of the things he did while he was working. He wasn't obviously using fantasy characters in this because it's sort of like an educational commercial thing that he was doing, and then he became Richard Corbin. Yeah, very nice guy. And when I met him, he was like 29 years old, something like that, and maybe 29, maybe 30 years old. White shirt. He was not hippie like at all. No, he looked like a regular guy that you would meet on the street. You would know that's not. Was that Richard Corbin? No, couldn't be Richard Corbin. Richard Corbin's got long hair and a beard. No, not at all. He wasn't like anything going on in the underground world. Not at all.
Yeah, and yeah, I didn't mean to say that your art is a replication, but the concept of detail, of the grit, reminds me of like Corbin. Crumb comes up, but Crumb was very much a surrealist cartoonist, but he had that sort of detail kind of thing going on.
I think we're all coming out of classical drawing like Rembrandt. The way that Rembrandt did etchings is the way both Crumb and Corbin did their kind of that cross hatching that they would do, and I got it from years of being a printmaker. I have a degree in printmaking that I got after I left comics. I left comics in the mid 70s. It's a lousy time to be in the underground comic thing. I had, everybody, when you're 17, you says, I want to draw Superman. And I want to draw Batman, stuff like that. That's like going to Hollywood. But underground, then I got into underground comics around the same time that I met Corbin. I was about 18, 19, 20 years old. And I got kind of hooked on just doing my own thing. but it was a lousy time. The head shops where all the comics were being sold, they got all shut down by the Supreme Court. And yeah, it's just that was the 70s, and which I probably wasn't ready for all that stuff. I needed some seasoning, but I left it and went back to college. And Vietnam War ended, and all the reasons we were all very upset, they dissipated. I went back to college, and I got into I took this class in etching, and I was just blown away by Rembrandt and Picasso and all the really great printmakers and stuff like that. And I basically everything that I do in all this stuff back here is really from my printmaking days. And then you got the digital stuff where you can actually color them,
Right.
you can never do in printmaking.
In printmaking, it just is what it is. Yeah, in printmaking, I never really thought about that, but that same sort of definition and detail on figures, like for a Rembrandt, that had never actually occurred to me to make that connection.
But he's the big guy. Everybody's coming out of this guy who does that kind of graphic stuff and does that cross hatching and everything. Two guys are like my big daddies, is Rembrandt and Leonardo. We'll never reach the heights for what these guys could do, but it's like the woman who the very high class woman who got caught shoplifting at Neiman Marcus, and they ask her what she thinks she's doing. She says, well, I'm a shoplifter, but I only steal from the best stores. And it's always my deal is go to the source, the guys who could really, like that little 8 by 10 inch drawing by Michelangelo, the satyr head, using cross hatching, tells you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know about cross hatching. And then Picasso's Vollard Suite, Minotaur Amachi, and those brilliant contour lines that are just perfect. And the Igor Stravinsky that he did in 1918. Those just really, that's my background. That's where all my drawings come from, because they all start out as these little contour lines like the Picassos and everything, and then I put in the Leonardo hatching and everything. I'm a left-hander, so I got to do it that way. Left, and then Rembrandt and stuff like that. And I've got a catalog of all these things in my head from 50 years of studying them, and that's where I'm coming from.
So with this new book, it says that like you're going through like 150 years of like a family history, with these historical events that go through. So what does a storyline deal with?
Storylines deals with first they're all strangely enough, they're based upon my great grandfather's family, and my mother's side, and I blend them together. And the title character, Blueboy, is 6'8", and he's 6'8" at the age of 12 years old. But that was my grandfather's brother. Yeah. And he was huge. And all of the characters are slightly like that, except that the storyline has nothing to do with their lives. Though they were lumberjacks. The people in the Blueboy Brown's family were lumberjacks. And since my dad was also a lumberjack, until he said, wait a second, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life, and became a salesman, and did the regular, white collar job thing. I knew a lot about these things. My father would talk about these incidents that happened to his family around the dinner table, because he was raised by his grandparents, who happened to be this family. And they're just a fascinating family. I was talking to a cousin of mine, a third cousin, who is the grandson, he's my age, of one of my grandfather's brothers. And we were talking about the family. He says, "Yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I heard about that." Blah, blah, blah. So but all the stuff that's in the comic is actually quite fictional. But it's a great little thing to feed off of. So I started out in 1914. The whole start thing in the first book starts out in 1914. It says the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket in a few months. It's like February 1914 and July 1914, the Archduke Ferdinand is assassinated and World War I starts. But before that happens, we're going to get into this. And it's about this big kid who has this problem. He's afraid. He's afraid of his mother because flowers are falling out of the sky. And he gets dumped in, he gets covered with flowers. And everybody thinks, you know, they're kind of afraid of him. And his mother keeps saying, "Well, you better stop this. You better stop this." And then this whole thing flows out of this kid. But I do because everybody's suspicious of these people.
Right.
Flowers falling out of the sky in southern Arkansas in 1914.
In 1914.
And yeah, they said these people, there's something wrong with these people. And they said, I think they're a bunch of killers. They're gossiping. The gossips of the town are saying they're a bunch of killers. They're on the run from the law. And of course, this is the farthest thing from the truth, except for one thing. There is one of them that's a killer.
Oh.
And that's where I start out with, going back to the Battle of Gettysburg and all the things that happened from that. Which actually is not that far fetched from my great-great-grandfather, who was in some major battles in the Civil War. And so I was able to take all this stuff from my family history and weave a kind of a weird story out of it, in which also the second one and the third one, we start getting into the fact that he's come across some of nefarious human beings who are incredibly evil.
Uh-huh.
And so now we have a good family and a very evil family, and they're coming together. And that's where the whole thing is going to start. And it's going to last for 45 comics.
Wow.
I've got 3 trilogies, a trilogy of trilogies that I'm setting up. And they go for 150 years, and they go start in just before World War I. We go back to the Civil War, then we go to the period just after the Civil War, and this is a conflict that I don't want to exactly give away. Yeah, you want to go read the book. You know, now I understand why these guys who are out on book tours say, "Yeah, if you want to find this out, you got to go read the book."
Right.
But and then around 1914, there's these things all come together. You can't get away from the people who have done you dirty, or you've done dirty, and it travels all the way up almost to the present. And there's evil, and it examines good and evil.
Does it end up in a feud between the families?
Oh, you just have to wait and see that one. It's gonna get good. It's gonna get good. Yeah, it's gonna get good.
So
yeah,
we mentioned the dawn of World War I, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and you have Gettysburg. Do you have a lot of other big historical moments that you're writing into the series?
Yes, but they're like, yeah, this was going on, but something else was going on here.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like I'm gonna bring you back to the Battle of the Bulge or something like that. I don't think I have any plans for doing that. But I do have what I have is I have how these evil people corrupt everything, and then you have to work your way out of it.
Like one of the interesting things, and it's not a thing you see so much in concepts of evil anymore, you know, in fiction such. It's always, evil is always this very well tailored, well dressed something, and but it's always sort of by itself. You know what I mean? The idea of the corrupting influence of evil is something that in a way isn't brought out in the forefront in storytelling as much as it used to be. Like used to have, I mean, even if you go back to the fantasy works of Tolkien, he's always, yes, this was evil and these people meant well, but what started out as good intention was, corrupted by this other agency, so on and so forth. And it turns into this, how did we get here? How did this come about? The series of dominoes fall. It sounds like you've got a strong element of that in this book.
In a way, but mine is much more fundamental. It's almost like grounded in things that I've seen. I'm 68 years old, and I've seen a lot of junk come down, an awful lot. Sort of like, especially when I was young, I hung out with some wild and crazy people, and I would notice certain things that I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. But later on, analyzing, I would say, "Oh, I'm glad I missed that one." I have I've dealt with some really strange people, especially when I was young. Not so much since I'd say by the time I was 30, I'd stopped messing around with people that were simply interesting.
Right.
I had to go get my college degree and stuff like that, and I started teaching and stuff like that. You're a teacher, your life changes completely. Yeah. You don't do anything silly when you're a teacher.
Well, in the 60s and 70s were an era where there was a lot of very open counterculture.
Oh yeah, I was part of it.
Yeah, and it was in many different directions. While there are countercultures now and such, it's not, back then it was loud and it was and it could be in people's faces.
And now it's almost everything's accepted. Back then, the things that were truly countercultural they were almost dangerous. It's kind of dangerous to even be involved in that kind of stuff. I was walking down Canal Street in San Francisco in 1973, and there in front of me was Abbie Hoffman of the Chicago 7, everything like that. He was on the run. I didn't know he was on the run, but I looked at him and I said, I'd read Steal This Book. I knew everything about Abbie Hoffman. He was looking around and everything. He went into a doorway and everything. I said, okay, I just went on my way. But I always remember that I saw Abbie Hoffman, and then I saw a report later on that Abbie Hoffman was like in hiding and everything like that. I said, well, I'm glad he got away.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. Was it the Weathermen? I don't remember their full name off the top of my head.
Weather Underground.
Thank you. Groups like that, yeah, were all over the place.
And they're college professors.
Now they're college professors. Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen in this world.
But the funny thing is no one could probably tell stories as good.
Oh no, I'm sure they can't write stories. They were not given the talent to write stories. That's something that some people are able to tell stories like straight from their out of their mother's womb. But I had to have some seasoning. I had to figure out. One thing. I was lucky enough to go to Pratt Institute and meet the foremost scholar on Heinrich Ibsen in the world, Rolf Fielde. And his grandpa knew Ibsen. The whole family was steeped in Ibsen. He taught me Ibsen and Shakespeare. He deepened my understanding of Shakespeare. Really, oh man, this guy was so wonderful. He's such a wonderful guy, and he befriended this guy. I was in my 30s at the time. It took a while to get into grad school, and so he took me to Broadway plays and stuff like that were renditions of his translations of Ibsen, and Ibsen made a big effect on me, big effect on how to work on theatrical things and shots and stuff like that. And then later on in college, I taught humanities for years, and one of the big parts of the course was theater and film. Well, that's just actually right in the wheelhouse of somebody who is going to come back to comics someday.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading Henry IV last night. You know, if you want to lead, you want to know how to start a story, read Shakespeare in Hamlet. You're not talking about anything, the main guts of the story right at the beginning. You're up at the top of this castle, and they're saying, "Hey, I saw a ghost."
Yeah,
Great way to start a story.
it's an immediate attention grabber.
Yeah,
Yes, I saw a ghost.
yeah, I
What?
saw a ghost. Hey, guess who? Guess who it was? Your dad.
It's your dad.
and in the beginning of Henry IV, the character is all these writers are coming in, say your son is dead. Your son is dead. He's in battle. You're not saying this just to what are you saying? He says, well, don't get mad at me, but I saw him. You didn't see him die. I heard somebody told me he was dead. But yeah, it's a great way to start a story by creating this thing that you can walk into, which is what I try to do at the beginning of each book, is to set up this little thing that you can walk into.
Like the example of the 1914 beginning.
Yeah.
To me, that strikes me as absolutely perfect that way, because not only is it sort of the stage of tension, but it also has a feeling of a countdown idea, like only this much time, and then everything's going kaput.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful like hit, and I think it's a really great one, because whereas those of us who kind of study history, we immediately go, oh, and it's something that younger generations of millennials and such can look at, and it gives them a sort of context of a time, if that makes sense, that they see that time capsule of people of that time. It's kind of a funny thing, because it's like I had some gamers, and they were playing some games that are set in like the 20s and 30s, for example, and like role-playing games, and you have to go in there, and they say, can my character have this? No, because it doesn't exist yet. And they just sort of look, or the functioning of an automobile, things like this, and they're aware that it's olden times, but when they start to, or telephones are all like party lines, they're not, you can't just call someone,
and they're this thing on a cord, and you're like a thing on a cord, and there's this speaker up there, and you have to be in one place. You can't walk around the room.
You can't walk around. So there is kind of an interesting sort of way to set up that walk-in point at this moment, and I think that there's an enticing element to it in that way, both as someone myself who knows a lot about World War One, but for people who have a vague idea, you know what I mean, that World War One was a thing, but it's like, it's tempting. Step in,
Yeah, it's the beginning and end of the old world. All the monarchies except for really England fell. Of course, the French Revolution had fallen in 1789 or something like that. Yeah. And that's really part of the tension of the 19th century, is when are these monarchies going to fall? And that's really, and I've studied Russian history a lot, and amazing thing how their whole thing was, all the secret police that was going on in the 19th century and everything had a lot to do with the idea that all the monarchies were extremely nervous about mass movements of people in revolt, which have been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, but they were always suppressed. This time it didn't happen, and World War One ruined it for them.
Yeah,
much of what we see in Downton Abbey is about the aftermath of World War One and how everything fell apart for the aristocracy. I don't have
Yeah.
to worry about the aristocracy. There's no aristocracy amongst the lumberjacks.
No. It's
But
and they were probably better off. Yeah.
well, the original family that I talk about is that they were Mennonites. And that
Okay.
gives me a segue also into the the Civil War thing, because my mother's side were the Mennonites. They were one of the original people who said slavery is bad.
Right.
Slavery is not is to be. Let's stop the slavery. They didn't do anything about it because they were non-violent. They were pacifists.
Pacifists, yeah.
But in my pacifist Mennonite great grandfather in the story, he goes off to the Civil War. And if you know anything about the Mennonites, if you do something like that, you have a good chance to be shunned. That's what happened to him.
Yeah.
And so now he's a wanderer. So everybody's a wanderer in this. Wandering is a good thing for stories.
The journey.
Yeah, the journey. You got a journey from here to there, and then coming up against evil again. Will we ever be able to get rid of evil?
The journey always has an element of a character finding themselves or their true nature, or maybe their flaws, so that they can either correct them or at least find a way to use them for the better.
Yeah, and everybody seems to have in my story, everybody seems to have a certain amount of flaws. Though Blueboy he's 12 years old. His main deal is, I sure do like my dog, but he's as big as a house. He's huge. And in one of my the last issue I had, he was in a buckboard. This is 1914. People are still driving buggies and horses around, and somebody comes up and says, "Hey, Blueboy." He says, "Hey, Flower Boy, my girl wants some roses and it's February. Help me out." And the guy next to him says, "Are you crazy? I've seen that boy throw trees across the road. He'd break you in two." And the guy says, "He ain't afraid of nobody," and runs off. And I get to draw horses. Lots of horses.
Yes, you're quite the equestrian artist.
I'm lucky enough to live in the town that has the Gulfstream Park and Calder racehorses, of course. And we have a horse country out here. So I have for years been going to the race course and out to horse country and just drawing horses. And that's the first thing I ever drew in 1959 was horses. 6 years old, my brother and I were drawing horses, taking them to school and selling them for a quarter. And that was my best money making proposition with art for many years. And we were drawing horses' heads.
Horses' heads.
He was much better than I was. Always was. He was always much better artist than me. But he gave it up. I didn't.
Oh.
It's a shame. He can do anything. He can still draw like nobody's business. He says, "I'd rather restore cars." He restores old cars.
It takes all kinds.
He's 6'7" too.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, I'm 6. I was for most of my adulthood, I was like 6'3", but I never felt big. When you got a 6'7" brother, you don't feel big.
You don't feel big, no. No.
In fact, all these people that I'm depicting, actually in the thing, I only have Blueboy be the big guy. The rest are all normal. But in my family, nobody's been under 6 feet tall since this family. It's James and Catherine. When they came together, something happened.
Something magic happened there.
Something magic happened. Well, they were wonderful people. From what my father spoke of them, they were absolutely wonderful people.
Have you ever owned any horses?
My wife's an equestrian, but I don't mess with horses that much. I've fallen off quite a few horses. I'm not particularly good at it. My wife is good at it. She when she was younger, she did dressage and jumping and stuff like that. She really loved it and everything. And that's what she was doing when I first met her. I'd go out to horse country with her, and she'd take horse riding lessons, and I would draw.
Oh, that's almost like a scene out of a movie.
Yeah, it is. It's
Horse
almost like a scene out of a movie.
in the background with the artist in the foreground.
In fact, I've got a picture of her over here with a gray horse that from close to 30 years ago. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. You should draw that one up one of these. That was such a visual description. You know what I mean?
It's nice. Falling off horses has never been one of those things that I really liked a whole lot. It's amazing that in the before the advent of the car, people would fall off horses and get killed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think about that too much. Is that people would fall off horses and get killed? All you had to do is hit a rock, boom.
Yeah.
It's a long way up. And if you're going 30 miles an hour, to fall at 30 miles an hour and hit the ground, you're going to get hurt.
You're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Lots of collarbones and ribs breaking. And worse things. Yeah.
They're beautiful though. The most beautiful animals. Dogs and horses. I love dogs and horses.
Dogs and horses. Yes. I'm a dogs and horses person.
Yeah. And like I was watching the equestrian Olympics. Just blown away how beautiful these horses are. I love horses. And drawing horses are just a blast. Because you just go, yeah. Oh, one of the great things that helped me with that, besides Gulfstream, was in the early days of the web, there were all types of things on the in things like Art Store and JSTOR.
Oh yeah.
I found all of Stubbs' horse anatomy drawings and print them up in 13 by 19 and have my collection of them. So if I'm ever stuck on where that hip goes in that what's underneath all that stuff, I know exactly what's going on. I just go to Stubbs.
Oh. Dogs. I have two Newfoundlands. They're kind of like horses.
Oh, those are beautiful. Those Newfoundlands are beautiful dogs.
Yeah.
I had a collie for many years. I love collies. I've had 3 collies in my life. Two when I was a little boy, and then I got one when I was living here in Florida, and he's gone now. But we have a corgi. Corgis are fun. Very sweet dogs.
They're a great family dog. We had one, and they're hilarious to watch run because they can they run and they seem to defy gravity. They can almost run around on a wall.
Yeah, they're crazy. Yeah, they're sweetest dogs.
With those tiny little legs, just propel them.
Yeah, and the minute they look at you, they're on their back saying, "Okay, it's time to rub the belly."
Yes.
You notice that?
Yes, they're so charming. Yeah.
And dogs are going to be a big part of later on. They've already had dogs in the story. They mostly eat food that can't be eaten by human beings.
Oh, like cast off stuff or
fried chicken and dumplings.
Okay.
Who can eat that?
So you sort of came to comics in the underground scene, and you kind of had to get out of there and be, what's it, a responsible adult?
I didn't do that for a long time. What it was is that in undergraduate school, I met a guy named Artie Romero, and he knew a bunch of guys in Colorado, and he moved back to Colorado. And while I was drawing this underground comic, I decided that I wanted to kind of just get out of. I was living in Missouri, so Colorado, it was Colorado. Colorado's cool. So I went to Colorado Springs and hooked up with a little group called Everyman Studios. And some of them have gone on to Artie Romero's part of Artie Romero Graphics, ARG Animation Studio. It is stuff that's shown in animation festivals and stuff like that. And then Rick Barry was one of them.
Rick Barry
he's works with Stephen King and Neil Gaiman and William Gibson. He was the first person to ever do a digital book cover for
Oh,
publication, William Gibson's Neuromancer.
Neuromancer.
So you probably
Oh,
had that
sorry.
book.
I hadn't made the connection. I have I have slipcased edition of the Talisman and Black House, the King Straub novels that the set is illustrated and signed by Barry.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. Oh, the work in there is amazing.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
Yeah.
So I hung out with some real cool guys, and I was the one who finished the comic book. I finished it in July of 73 and August 73. I went out to San Francisco and I sat for an afternoon with Gilbert Shelton, real sweet guy at Rip Off Press. He didn't want to publish my book, but he said it was very nice about it. It was a very nice rejection, and a real gentleman, and let me watch him do a Furry Freak Brothers cartoon for that week, a strip. So I got to look at a really good cartoonist and how he did it. It's really interesting. This is long before digital art and everything. This is rapidographics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And very, very nice guy. And so I didn't have a whole lot of luck with that book. I eventually got it published in 1979. But I'd pretty much left the comic book industry by that time. And I struggled to get through college because of all those recessions in the 70s. First thing they would do is they'd fire college students. Yeah. Okay. So eventually I figured out I need to get into a job where there's no recession. So I became an orderly.
Mm-hmm.
There are no recessions in healthcare.
That's true.
Yeah, there's always sick people. So I put myself through college doing that. And one day in 1985, I was at a party, and this guy came up to me. He says, "Are you the Dave Taylor?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Here," and he showed me the Comics Journal 103, in which I was mentioned. And he was mentioning my underground comic that had gotten published about 6 or 7 years before. Mm-hmm. And they lamented my leaving comics because they said I was a big deal who had gone off to do fine art. And I looked at it and said, well, that ship's passed. I didn't know anything about what was going on in the comics world at that time. I didn't know that the Dark Knight Returns and all the Frank Miller stuff was going on. I had a slice idea about it. I was doing, etchings and paintings and stuff like that, and art history, and just trying to get by and, taking care of old people on the weekends. And and then but this guy became a real good friend of mine, and he gave me a copy of this thing, and I kept it in my scrapbook. And then I went off to Pratt and got my degree doing that, stuff like that. And I came down here to Miami because the fine arts chairman at Pratt came up to me in the hall one day. He said, "David, I'm going down to Miami to be the dean of the New World School of the Arts. I rented a house. It has a pool." I said, "It has a pool?" Brooklyn is not known for its pools. Right. And Brooklyn in August is unbelievably hot because it's all concrete. Everything is concrete. I had one of the worst Augusts I ever had was at the top of Willoughby Hall, 17 stories up, and I was looking out the window at 2:00 in the morning, and there's flies and gnats outside the window and everything, 17 stories up, and I was sweating like a politician on election day. 2:00 in the morning. So pool in the backyard, Miami. So I came down here and started working for him. I've been here since. I don't have a pool in my backyard, but I do have air conditioning.
Air conditioning is good.
Oh, I love air conditioning. It's the first time I ever had air conditioning was here. Nobody had air conditioning where in the Midwest, nobody uses air conditioning. They sort of like have air conditioning. I think once right at the end of the portion of my life where I was living with my parents, they got a house that had air conditioning. That was nice. But after that, on my own, whoever had air conditioning, I would just take a bath and lay on the couch with no fan on me. You know how it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you talk about the underground comic scene, it's kind of interesting, and there's a bit of a parallel, I'd say, with the with sort of the video game art as well, is that they sort of start out as this thing where there's this cultural fight between whether they're for kids, whether they're for adults, whether they should be split, whether they should have an identity at all. The big fight in the 50s over the EC titles.
Yeah.
This is not, where it became about kids. And it is sort of been such a slow process for comics to, the comics code and every other thing. In the 80s, you start getting books. You've got the Dark Knight, like you said, the Frank Miller coming out with that, and with Daredevil, his changes there, which he tried to find ways to make those books grow up but still have that little code on them. The guy who got Alan Moore, you got Alan Moore doing Watchmen and Swamp Thing, Saga of the Swamp Thing, which is also trying to, and it's like that war went on for so very long, just trying to eke that out, difficulty finding the audience, and so forth. And it kind of is interesting now to me in a way that whereas publishers were very standoffish a lot of the time on material, unless it was a proven name. I mean, Miller can get away with doing something as violent as The Dark Knight because he, that run on Daredevil or something like that. Sure. But they came in from something that was friendlier, and they made names of themselves and then pitched this bigger, darker, or more adult sort of a variation on the world. And then they end up there, but online now with the advent of the internet and ebooks and such, you sort of lose that separation. It's a lot easier to get your work noticed. Probably a lot easier to self-publish your own work as well.
I found self-publishing to be so much more doable. Like when I didn't get back into comics until I retired from teaching. I'm still teaching part-time as a college teacher, but I was a high school teacher for years because I got married, and she said, you really need benefits.
Insurance is good.
Yeah, and now I'm safely retired, and I was looking at this story. I'd written this story about these people that are actually Blueboy Brown and his family back in the 2000s. I had a treatment of it, several chapters and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And I said, why don't I do comics of this? Why shouldn't I do comics of this? And then I started looking around at the comics world, and I realized that you could do it through crowdfunding, which mm-hmm. I was teaching high school, and one of the things my professors in college says, David, don't ever become a high school teacher, because that's all you'll do. It'll take up all your time. And so I wasn't aware of many of these things. So I started doing up this little treatment on Blueboy Brown. I created this character, this 6'8" at 12 years old character, and everybody was scared of him except the children. Children knew that he was a child, so they didn't have any problems with him. But the old folks, they were saying, "Well, get that person away from me." And I just started doing it, and I sent it off to Romero and Barry, mm-hmm. and they were very supportive. They really loved it. I said, well, I'm going to start doing this. And I said, okay, now what I'll do is I'll do a rough draft on the web. And then when I get to the point where I'm going to do hard copies, I'll do a rewrite. And I'll also color it up more beautifully in Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff. And then I found this absolutely incredible printer in the United States called Mixam. They're really good, and they have a real quick turnaround. And so I'm working on my 4th book, and it's going to be I'll have the 5th book done before the end of the year. And Kickstarter, even though it's I have small print runs, it's fine with me because I have to pack these things up.
Right.
And I've also got 45 issues that I'm going to be doing. Got plenty of time for people to discover me, if they discover me. And I've got a nice crowd of readers that are very loyal, and it allows me to publish each time. So I'm real happy.
Kickstarter's been good to you?
Kickstarter's been very good to me. Kickstarter's been very good to me. I'm not one of the projects they love or anything like that. I don't mind about that. I think I'm out of the mainstream. I'm doing a quasi Western about hillbillies who cut down trees, and flowers fall out of the sky, and they fall in love with little girls fall in love with them, and everybody thinks, you stay away from that boy. Those people are murderers. And there's a love story in there, but it's a very sweet love story. It'll get darker later on. Things are going to get dark. Evil comes into it, and they turn everything upside down. But that's the fun of the whole thing, is that sooner or later you got the whole thing resolves itself. It's going to take 45 issues to do it.
There's such a Steinbeckian magic to your description.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment,
because these guys are straight out of Grapes of Wrath. These guys are straight out of Grapes. And you see, I have this my whole theory about writing, which it took a long time for me to become a writer. I wrote my stuff when I was in the underground comics and everything like that. It was not particular. What I don't own this stuff. This is a different person. But I write about what I know. I know these people intimately. I know this culture intimately because I was born in Southern Arkansas. I know these people. I know these people who I know sharecroppers. I know the hardships of being a sharecropper. I know the whole thing. I understand. The diction you see, the dialogue, the dialect of Arkansas and Missouri dialect. My father spoke that dialect. I listened to it for all my life until he passed away. And so when they say, I'll go over there and get that there thing for me.
Yep.
I know all that. I hear these voices in my head, and they're the voices of my father, who had he liked to tell tall tales about the family around the kitchen table, and he was really good at it. I think that's where I got it. And he was this like movie star, handsome guy who I suppose had his own adventures. He was in just the tail end of World War II. He didn't go doing the fight and everything. He was an MP, and so he had all types of tales and stuff like that. And I'm lucky, I'm kind of lucky in that I had a dad who could tell tall tales, and so I write about what I know. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I have a small audience right now, is because I'm not writing about vampires and The Walking Dead or anything like that, or there's no apocalypse that's going to be coming at us or anything like that. There's no nuclear war or anything. I don't know. I don't think there'll be a nuclear war.
All the major stuff is really, really, really entrenches itself on particularly genre. It becomes very recyclative of itself. Obviously, the whole superhero thing right now is a thing, but the zombies and they keep announcing new zombie shows, and after a while it's like, they kind of always do the same thing.
There aren't that many plots available. It's always, like they said, there's like 8 to 10 plots that are really recyclable, that you just do this and stuff like that.
Yes, something like that. I think it was Joseph Campbell
I
has
don't
a
know if it
thing
was
about
him, but yeah, you're right.
the mythic hero's journey or whatever, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it always like there's these three things that have to occur in every story or something like that. But yeah, it's like how many times, okay, so that they haven't barricaded themselves in a farmhouse. This time it's an office building.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
And
you know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Die Hard.
die hard into this, die hard with that, die hard with undead people who want to eat you. Uh,
So I'm happy, very happy doing what I'm doing, and I don't get into I don't have thousands or hundreds and hundreds of readers, but I have enough to publish, and I have time. 45 comics is a long time. Sooner or later, maybe something will happen and people will notice, and if they don't, I'll keep on publishing. What else I got to do?
keep on trucking with it. Awesome. Was there anything else you'd like to let the watchers, listeners, whatever they are, know?
Well, just that we're in the midst of a Kickstarter campaign all the way up till September 16th. And there's all types of cool stuff. I make my own handmade stickers of Blueboy Brown.
Oh,
And
do you do like stretch goals like that?
yeah, little stretch goals. I sometimes I'll get all ambitious and I'll say, you need to have an upgrade on what you bought, or I'll send out in the first comic. I actually send out little original drawings to everybody, and because I'm so happy that I rep my gold first day. Yeah, I had a really good time. I've got a lot of good friends too that helped me out.
I did a Kickstarter recently for a game. Somebody was kickstarting a game, and after you backed it and you got your backer kit thing as a person who backed it, the backer kit literally shows their store of products right there. Oh, you want to add this? You want to add this? I thought this was genius.
Yeah.
Because I immediately went, I want some dice to go with that game. There's another $16 on something I paid $100 for, 2 months ago. And wait, oh yeah, but it's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, because at that time it's only $16.
Yeah, it's not in fact you've spent 116, but your brain processes it as the 100, and well, now it's just 16.
I should try that. Problem is you gotta make these things.
Yeah,
to make these things. Oh.
He actually said, a friend of mine interviewed him and asked him why, because a lot of that kind of stuff, there are all these very, very expensive stretch goals. I asked him why his stretch goals were stretch gifts were a little more modest, and he said because you have to factor in the cost of making them, and most of those companies don't, and it ends up costing them a ton of money, on the back end when the thing's done. They go, oh no, what did I get myself into?
Guess I could show these things.
There it is.
Yeah, and there's
nice.
And then there's the second issue. They're all backward, but still, second issue and back cover.
And they're showing right way around for me, so they're probably going to show that way in the video.
Maybe they will. That'd be good.
Yeah, because I think the video transfers over literally.
Really?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got my third one here, which I'll have to take it out of my bag. There's the third one.
Hold on, right there you go.
That's where they start to get into conflict with the evil guys.
That's the evil guys.
Yeah, the evil guys.
Nice.
So I'm doing these. I've got it down to where it's going to be at least 40 pages each issue, with a perfect bound cover. And my printer is just so good. And
I can tell from the quality of you opening and flipping the pages that
it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's a good quality book.
Yeah, it's a really high quality book. Like, yeah. Yeah, it's just superb, just really superb. I'm really happy with them. I don't think I'll ever be drawn away from those guys. They're superb. They turn it around in a week. You got your book back.
A week.
A week. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have to do customs that are shipped from overseas or anything like that. They're done in Maryland, and they ship them down to me.
That's a special thing in the Kickstarter world.
Yeah.
Quick fulfillment is not something that happens. I waited 1.5 years on something once.
I've waited a while too. This is my 4th issue. I've gotten all 3 issues out on time, and they're all about 2.5 months apart. They're like bi-monthlies, and I've gotten them all out on time. And when I sent them off, within a few days, we got them.
That's just awesome. That doesn't happen on Kickstarter.
No, I've noticed it doesn't happen, but yeah. I am determined. If I'm going to put out 45 issues, I've got to put them out at a certain clip. Otherwise, I don't know, have enough time to live for 45 issues. This is going to take 7 years. It's going to take me 7 years or so. I'll be 75 years old, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun because I know the story. I've already gotten the story written. I know I've written the last trilogy. I've got mapped out the second trilogy. I know what's going on in the first trilogy. I've got it all done. It's an epic mashup of things that I'm real happy about.
Keep on trucking.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to throw a link to the Kickstarter.
Great, thank you.
In the description with the video, so we can get people over there looking at it, and your home page, your Facebook page, Twitter page, everywhere.
Good.
So people can check you out and check your work out. So,
got an Instagram page too.
Which page?
Instagram.
Oh, you got an Instagram page too?
Yeah, I think yeah, let me see. Yeah. It's Instagram, Blueboy Brown Comics.
Got it.
Yeah. Instagram. Let me see if I can copy it. Is there a chat function here?
There is chat box. You can actually email it because it doesn't allow copy paste from the chat in Zoom.
Okay. It's just simply Instagram.com/Blueboy Brown Comics.
Gotcha. Well, I have been here with David Greg Taylor. Any final words of wisdom for our viewers?
Well, I'm just making comics, and this is my point of view of the world. And I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to have met you. I'm very grateful for this interview. Word of mouth is my way of getting this thing done. So this is a beautiful thing to do. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And the last interview I did was, gosh, it was a long time ago. And the first thing I said as an artist is same as a doctor: do no harm. Do no harm. Make the world a better place because they saw your art. And that's basically what I'm trying to do.
It seems to be exactly what you're doing. So
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, you have a good night.
You too.
And
I'm so happy to have met you.
Oh, you as well. Take care.
Okay.